I'd like to call the hearing to order and turn it over to our hearing officer, Mr. Esquire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the continued hearing on the conditional use application of Three Creeks LLC for their property on Bondsville Road. We last met on February 20th of this year. At that time, we had concluded the direct testimony of Mr. Kennedy, one of the applicant's witnesses. So we're at a point, unless there's something further on direct from Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Foley would have the opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Kennedy. But before we get to that, I would just like to remind everybody to speak loudly and clearly and into the microphones so we can make a proper record. We're going to have the witness sit over there. There is a microphone there, so the witness needs to be aware of that microphone. Ms. Dunn, how many witnesses do you have beyond this witness?
Two additional.
Okay. So you heard the chairman.
You got you speaking in the microphone.
Two additional.
So what we'll try to do is complete, who's your next witness, if I may?
It would be Mr. Boyer.
Okay, so what we're going to try to do is finish up Mr. Kennedy and then try to do all of Mr. Boyer's testimony, both direct and cross, if we can. You heard the chairman indicate before the meeting, the hearing convened, that we'd like to conclude around 8:30. I don't know whether that's going to give us enough time or not, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Thank you very much. Mr. Foley?
Yes, thank you. I'm ready to cross Mr. Kennedy.
And Mr. Kennedy, just a reminder that you're still under oath. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Kennedy. My name is Ed Foley. I was asked to represent the Township administration in this proceeding, and I was here for your testimony last time.
Good evening.
Is Mr. Foley's microphone on?
I have a green light.
Okay, I'm having trouble picking it up.
I will turn it up when the screaming noise comes.
I'll bring it closer.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Kennedy, I reviewed your impressive CV. I see that you are a member currently of a Township Planning Commission. You've been a member of a Borough Planning Commission. You're also a current member of a Regional Planning Commission. Is that correct?
Actually, that was correct earlier. Well, as of last year, I moved out of Lower Southford Township, so I have resigned from the Lower Southford Planning Commission and also the Indian Valley Regional Planning Commission. And I did serve on those boards for quite some time.
For many years.
Yes.
You've also, at least the ones that are listed on your CV, you've consulted on at least 20 residential developments and at least 11 non-residential developments. So I assume that you are, in your career, you've had opportunity to review a number of zoning ordinances.
Yes, I have.
Thank you. My question then is it common or uncommon for zoning ordinances to allow construction of townhomes within the riparian buffer areas?
It is, it would depend on the individual situation and the code, I would say.
Would it be fair that in those ordinances where it's permitted, typically some kind of relief is required?
That is correct, yes.
It would never be a use by right.
That is correct.
And I know you testified that you've reviewed the ordinance in this township. Am I correct that, like others, this township does not allow construction of townhomes within either of the 50-foot riparian buffer zones?
That is correct. However, there is a clause for where a modification can be requested.
Yes, that modification relates to certain specific ordinance sections, but does not apply to use requests. Is that accurate?
I'm not necessarily sure about that.
Okay. Let me draw your attention to the ordinance section. Bear with me 1 second. Maybe we could start with ordinance section 399-13.1, Riparian Corridor Conservation District.
Sorry, what section is that?
13.1. And specifically, subparagraph C is the one that lists uses permitted in the Riparian Corridor Conservation District. I don't need to belabor it. I think you've answered it. Townhouses and similar structures are not expressly permitted. The modification section that you referred to, I believe, is in that same section, subparagraph I.
I believe it's D, section DI,
Yes, thank you.
or,
Capital D, or, no, no, not in mine.
no.
Capital I entitled Modifications to Riparian Corridor Conservation District Standards.
Right.
And in general, under I, there are different ways that you can ask for a modification depending on what type of application is being presented.
That's correct.
But in each of those sections, the modifications that are allowed are limited to section 13.1, capital B, C1, and C1A. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And then when you go down to the bottom of that same page, subparagraph number 6, I'll read it if I can, says that no alteration of the use regulations set forth in section 13.1, capital C, 1B, and small c, comma, C parentheses 2, comma, and D shall be authorized as a modification pursuant to this section. Any such requested alteration shall constitute an application for a variance, meeting all applicable requirements for same, to be submitted to the zoning hearing board. Did I read that accurately, as far as you know?
Yes. That's correct.
So I noticed that on your original, the applicant's original application, those variances were called out, requesting variances from sections 13.1 C2, 13.1 D1, 13.1 D2, quote, to allow the proposed dwelling units, comma, parking areas, and stormwater basins within the outer 50 feet of the riparian corridor, period, unquote. That was on the original plan, it was a plan note. Is that still part of this application, those requests for variances?
It's not part of this application. This is purely an application for the use itself. If there are other regulations that would have to be met, including variances, we would still have to then go meet all of those other regulations.
Yes, and this is clearly not the zoning hearing board, but
That's true.
I guess my question is, in addition to seeking conditional use approval for the use, are you by inference requesting that the Board of Supervisors either support or at a minimum remain neutral as to those future zoning applications?
if it was determined that we needed to go to the zoning hearing board, I would hope that the township would remain neutral in that application.
Is there any doubt in your mind that zoning hearing board relief would be required to permit townhouses within the riparian buffer zone?
I have to object to that, just in terms of the fact that it seems speculation for the zoning hearing board from the witness.
I think if I heard the question right, and I think you used the term doubt, I think the question basically was, are you going to need relief from the zoning hearing board to place the structures in the riparian buffer area?
I would say we don't know yet. It's speculative.
If the witness doesn't know, that's
I just
fine.
want the objection on the record.
Okay, that's fine.
The reason I asked is he said if we have to do that, and he's familiar with the zoning ordinance, he testified that he reviewed it.
Yeah, the
He's a
witness
land-
can answer. We're going to overrule the objection.
If it was determined that a modification for the riparian corridor could not be granted in accordance with the riparian corridor regulations, then we would have to seek a variance from the zoning hearing board.
And is it, after reviewing the ordinance, is it your understanding that those variances would be required?
It would depend on the determination of this board.
Okay. Drawing your attention to the applicant's Exhibit 9, which is the plan. Can we get that up? It's A9.
What exhibit was that?
It's A9, it's the amended application plan showing the current proposed configuration.
It's in that notebook, Carl.
Right. There's no A.
You have that?
Yes, I do.
And that was prepared by either you or your office?
That's correct.
I note that the existing stream is called out. The plan basically identifies all the streams and water courses, does it not?
Yes, it identifies the stream and then, excuse me, a couple of drainage features.
Yes. So the one that runs north and south parallel to and near Bondsville Road is expressly labeled as existing stream. Is that because it generally flows year-round?
Yes, and it is noted on a number of maps, including FEMA maps.
Thank you. Then there's another water course identified. The labeling is to the south of this property, identified as drainage feature. And is that labeled that way because this is only an intermittent water course?
Yes, it was, I did not have any information that would indicate that it would be classified as a stream and/or waters of the town well.
Very well. There's another water course shown running, it runs from the east onto the property, not labeled as a drainage feature, but since it merges into another one where it's downstream, still labeled as a drainage feature.
Correct.
Would that one that runs east to west, would that also be an intermittent water course?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. And then lastly, the one that runs from the north to the south, joining with those, is labeled as drainage feature. Again, that's an intermittent water course to your knowledge.
Yes.
Now, the north-south one is labeled as, quote, "to be piped." That labeling generally in the middle of the depiction of the property. Do you have an understanding as to where that piping would start upstream to the north?
Well, it would have to start at the property line on the northern side of the property.
And why do you say it would have to start there?
Well, otherwise there would have to be some kind of easement or something. It's not part of the site.
And to your knowledge, has there been any contact with the northern property owner to get such an easement or even a construction easement?
I could not say.
Okay. Do you know who owns that property?
No, I do not.
And then on the southern end, where would your understanding be of where that piping would end?
It would end after it has passed what I'll describe as the alleyway or driveway at the back of the proposed units.
Somewhere between there and where it joins with the other drainage feature?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on the plan, all three of those watercourses are noted with the symbol being a solid line interrupted by 3 dots. So do we understand that that's your chosen symbol for a watercourse? It's not intended to differentiate between streams that are free-flowing and other watercourses that
That
are
is correct.
intermittent?
That is correct.
And that's why you labeled them with words. Now, we notice that on the plan, you show the riparian buffer zones 1 and 2 along the southern drainage feature and along the unlabeled eastern watercourse, correct?
Yes.
And as recited in your response to the township's review letter, is the reason that the riparian buffer zones are not shown on the north-south watercourse simply because you're proposing to pipe that water underground?
Yes, that is correct.
And by piping it underground, you would eliminate the riparian buffer zones that would otherwise be attached to that watercourse?
That is correct.
What approvals would be required, other than township approvals? What approvals would be required for permission to pipe that watercourse underground?
There would be a number of permits required by the state, and that would really be the expertise of the engineer.
Sure, fair enough. Do you know whether anyone has approached the state, DEP or otherwise, about those future permits to determine whether they're feasible?
No, I do not know.
Would there be anyone else that would have to review or grant approval of the piping of a watercourse?
There may be.
Would you think that the County Planning Commission would want to review that aspect?
I would think so.
But the November 15th, 2023 sketch plan that was submitted to the County Planning Commission did not show the proposed piping. Do you know why that was?
I couldn't say.
Can you tell me what exhibit you're looking at, Mr. Foley, please?
Sure. Can actually do better because we have acquired a full-size copy of that plan submission. How many would you like?
May I ask a clarification question on the riparian buffer? Is there any objection to that? Mr. Kennedy, I think Mr. Foley asked you about the depiction of the riparian corridor, and I think that it's shown for the part that's labeled existing stream, which is parallel and adjacent to Bondsville Road, correct? So the 100-foot riparian corridor is depicted for the existing stream. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Then I think you said it's also depicted for the drainage feature which runs in an east-west direction, the southern side of the property. Is that correct, that the riparian corridor is depicted for that?
That is correct.
So it's not actually labeled, but your testimony is that the riparian corridor is depicted by a dashed line. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so, but on the southern side of the east-west drainage feature, the riparian corridor is not depicted, is it?
That's correct. That would go off the site.
Okay. Thank you.
So we've handed you a copy of what I've pre-marked as exhibits T1 and T2. We'll have witness testimony later to identify those as the submission and one of the two plans that was submitted to the Chester County Planning Commission at the applicant's request. That sketch plan, exhibit T2, is dated November 15th of 2023. Was that prepared by your office?
Yes, it was.
And your sketch plan for conditional use, exhibit A9, is dated later, December 4th of 2023, correct?
If that is the date on the drawing, that's correct.
Yes, thank you. Do you know why the earlier plan was submitted to the Chester County Planning Commission, the one that does not show the proposed piping of one of the water courses?
Now, when you say the later plan, you're talking about T2.
Yeah, it's actually an earlier plan, exhibit T2, dated.
T. I just want to make sure for the record,
Yes.
you're talking about T2.
Correct.
Thank you.
And the question was, do you know why the earlier plan, exhibit T2, was submitted to the County Planning Commission instead of the later plan that calls for piping of one of the water courses?
I'm looking at T2. It still indicates that the stream is piped. It is not labeled, but most likely the label is turned off inadvertently. But I can see right here that the stream is still, or drainage feature is still shown as being piped. It's always been piped, shown as piped in any of our sketches.
And is that designation on T2 the dotted lines that run parallel to the water course?
Yes, there are two parallel lines that are roughly on both sides of the stream.
Okay. But no labeling?
On T2, there is no labeling for the pipe. That is correct.
Okay. May I assume that you were not the one that chose which plan to submit to the County Planning Commission?
That is correct.
All right, so you don't know why one was chosen over the other?
That is correct.
All right. The reason I asked is because you emphasized strongly last time that the County Planning Commission made no comment about the streams. And my question is whether or not they might have if it had been called out as to be piped, as it is before this board.
Well, I think that the county reviews a large number of plans every year, and I would think and hope that they can read the way that that area on the plan has been drawn and understand that there would have to be some kind of piping somewhere along there.
Okay. Now, as the property presently sits, there are 3 watercourses on it prior to piping, correct?
There are watercourses and drainage features. I'm not an expert in wetlands or
Understood.
stream classifications.
But absent piping, riparian buffers would be required to be shown for all 3 of those, as you did for the drainage features and the unlabeled drainage feature running east to west.
If it was determined by a professional that they were in fact streams, then they would have to have riparian buffers. That's correct.
Or watercourses. If that, we'll ask this as a hypothetical then, if in fact it is determined that riparian buffers should be shown from the north-south drainage feature, that would place at least 2, probably 4 of the proposed townhouse units within an inner Zone 1 riparian buffer, would it not?
In that particular location, yes, that is true.
And then all 3 of the units to the west of that watercourse would be within either the inner or outer riparian buffer zone.
If there was a riparian buffer, yes. that would
Yes,
be-
and again, we're still hypothetical, and I'm guesstimating 5 of the units to the east would be within the 100-foot buffer zone.
Perhaps, yes. Approximately 5, I would think.
And but they could be moved perhaps a few feet one way or the other if necessary, yes?
They could be adjusted, which is what the land development phase is really for.
Yeah. Other than township approvals, what permits would be required in order to encroach on the outer 50 feet of the riparian buffer zone?
Again, that would be something I would defer to the engineer on.
Fine, and same as to the inner?
Yes.
Very well. The County Planning Commission did recommend an 80-foot wide right-of-way for minor collector roads to allow for future improvements. Has any analysis been done to see whether an 80-foot wide right-of-way is feasible?
No, we did not evaluate an 80-foot right-of-way.
Bear with me, I apologize. Bear with me 1 second, I apologize.
While Mr. Foley is contemplating, I just wanted to, again, try to clarify something. So if you look at Exhibit T2, Mr. Kennedy,
Yes, sir.
and you prepared that, correct?
Yes.
The 9 townhouses which are parallel to Bondsville Road on the western side of the property, you see those?
Yes.
All of those are in the riparian buffer. Is that correct?
Within the outer buffer, that is correct.
They're within the, and I'm not certain what the ordinance calls it, but they're in the, I call it the outer 50 feet.
That is correct, yes.
And as Mr. Foley questioned you, if a riparian buffer is required on the north-south drainage feature, which you depict on this plan, which is crossing the middle of the site, if the riparian buffer is required there, then it appears to me, without a scale, that the 3 townhouses on the west side of that drainage easement would be in the riparian buffer. Is that correct?
If there was a buffer on that water course, yes.
And on the other side, on the east side, 3 or 4, and again, we don't have a scale on the plan, but at least 4, maybe more of the townhouses on the east side would be in the riparian buffer.
A number of them would be, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I'm reading. The plan is at a very small scale, so
I agree.
it's kind of difficult.
The scale is determined by the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. I started to ask earlier, the County Planning Commission also recommended a traffic study, and we understand that the applicant is not proposing that at this stage of the development. But drawing your attention to the criteria and standards for conditional use approval in section 137, capital D. One of them is that the property or lot in question has sufficient capacity to accommodate the use, and that when the incremental increase in the traffic attributable to the proposed use is superimposed upon the existing use of roads, it shall not lower the level of service of the roads or any portion thereof or any street intersections below an acceptable level of service. Without requiring a traffic study, do you know whether the engineer or anyone else is going to present testimony about the level of service of the intersection or the roads?
I don't believe that there has been any traffic study done at this point, so that information would not be available at this time, but that would be required under land development.
Well, to be clear, I'm reading from the criteria and standards for conditional use.
No, I realize that.
Okay, so as far as you know, the applicant does not plan to address that.
I'm sorry, just for the record, hold on. For the record, are you reading from the County Planning Commission's letter?
No, I'm reading from the
Oh, okay, I
from
thought
the
you said you were
ordinance.
reading from the, okay.
No.
And what section was that, sir?
Yes. 137, capital D, 1, little e. That same section in final subsection, little g, requires that the applicant shall establish that the proposed use reflects an environmentally sensitive approach to land planning and design based on thorough site analysis and evaluation relating to topography, soils, vegetation, hydrology, visual quality, and related site conditions and characteristics. I believe you testified that the applicant proposes to do a wetlands study only at the time of land development.
That is correct. That's my understanding.
Are you aware of whether, in order to get approval for sewage capacity to serve a residential development, the Township Sewer Authority requires the effluent to be discharged on the subject property?
I'm not aware of the sewer regulations of the township.
In your analysis and drawing of site plans, did you take into consideration any need for discharge of sewer effluent on the site?
We did not take that into account. My understanding was that this had been incorporated into the Act 537 plan in terms of treatment of the effluent, and therefore would not be an issue.
The applicant requested and obtained a, what's called a quote, will serve, unquote, letter from Aqua as to water, correct?
That is correct.
Do you know whether any similar request for a will serve letter was made to the Township Sewer Authority?
I do not know.
The plan shows a half of a road proposed to intersect Bondsville Road at Reeseville Road. Do you know whether there's been any discussions with PennDOT about the feasibility of that intersection design?
No. We have not talked to PennDOT. We simply were using the township's planning documents, the official map, comprehensive plan, and some specific studies, the Guthrie'ville Village study, and that is how we came with the proposed alignment.
Okay. Have there been any discussions with the adjacent property owner about allowing the road construction, grading or piping, or future widening of the road onto the other half at this point, if you know?
I'm not aware of any conversations.
Okay. Are you aware that the development plans for adjacent properties show wetlands running to both the eastern and southern property lines of the Three Creeks property?
I had seen some information from the development to the south, but it did not necessarily indicate that there were wetlands on this property.
Can we clarify for the record that you're not asking whether or not there are wetlands on this property, correct?
Not yet.
Just adjacent, correct?
Yes. Luke, I have another exhibit, please. The van, one for the witness.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm showing you what I believe to be a recorded subdivision plan for an adjacent property. And I'm not asking you to accept its veracity. The question is hypothetical. If, as shown on that recorded plan, there are in fact wetlands both to the east and to the south. Is there any reason to expect that they would magically terminate at the property lines?
No, they wouldn't necessarily terminate at the property lines, but they appear to be diminishing in size as they approach the subject property.
Is that your testimony as to the southern one as well? Diminishing in size as it approaches?
Looking at at least what I can see on this plan, yes.
Okay. I believe you testified that the on-site soils are primarily Cokesbury silt loam, which is a poorly drained hydric soil, correct?
I don't know that I necessarily testified to soils. I mean, we looked at the soils map.
Okay, I'll withdraw that. Reading exhibits instead of testimony. From your review of the ordinance, are you aware that ordinance section 13.1 requires that where a wetlands delineation is not provided, the wetlands boundary shall be assumed to be the hydric soil boundary as mapped by Chester County?
I am aware of that.
Okay. And do we understand that despite that, the applicant does not propose to do a wetlands delineation at this stage?
In my experience, that is typical, that for conditional use, wetlands investigation would not be done, or a soils investigation, because those soils in the Chester County soils mapping would need to be confirmed.
Is that your experience even when the ordinance requires the board to assume that most of the site is wetlands?
Objection. No lack of foundation, that it is assumed that this property is composed mostly of wetlands. I'm not sure where that is in the testimony anywhere.
It's not in the testimony, it's in the ordinance, which he's familiar with.
No, that this property is composed of mostly wetlands?
I'm quoting, subparagraph B. Absent a wetlands delineation, comma, the wetlands boundary shall be assumed to be the hydric soil boundary as mapped by Chester County.
And where is the map, the underlying foundation?
It's in your exhibits.
I'm sorry?
It's in your exhibits.
Okay, can we point to that for the record,
Sure.
though, so that they...
Well, I'm not sure what the objection is, but I think the witness, didn't you testify that you're not certain whether the soils on the property are hydric soils?
That's correct. In my experience, many soils that are mapped in a soil survey as being wet or hydric often are not. These soil surveys were conducted decades ago and conducted by aerial photography. They're used to be guidance for farmers. They're not meant to be used as guidance for land development. They have become that over time. And therefore, I recommend all of my clients go get the soils tested. They're a soil scientist and get a qualified test of the actual soils on your property.
But I think in response to Mr. Foley's question, you answered, you don't know whether there are hydric soils.
That is correct.
Okay. So I don't think he could answer your question.
That's all right.
Mr. Foley.
We'll move on. I just have one last question. I noticed that you're showing strings of 9 units of townhouses. Is that a common planning device, that you would have 9 connected townhouses in a row?
I would say it's not common, but it's not prohibited. And in my experience, most developers want to get as many units as they can.
And that's really the point of the question. In order to break up these 2 strings of 9 units, because of the configuration of the site, you would probably have to lose a unit out of each of those two strings in order to create a reasonable gap, would you not?
I don't know that that's necessarily the case. We would also need much more accurate information regarding survey, topography, et cetera, because this is not a survey at all.
Yeah. And again, no topo being done at this stage of the game, correct?
No, the topo is all from the POSDA Penn State website.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay.
What, you have any redirect?
Thank you.
Why don't we do that first, and then if the board has any questions, you can ask them.
Just to,
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Yeah, she might be able to.
ready? I can proceed?
Yeah, oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy, you were asked whether or not certain development features were permitted pursuant to section 399-13.1, typically townhomes within a riparian corridor setback, correct?
That's correct.
Do you know whether or not, according to that same section of the ordinance, extension roads, highways, traffic circles are permitted? Specifically, I would have you look at 3.1.
Did you say 3 or is it 13?
13. 3.1. Uh, 13.1, and the use criteria are found within subsection C.
That is correct. C is uses permitted in the riparian corridor conservation district. I do not see,
And within D, if you could look at D for me. D2, small c.
that says motor or wheeled vehicle traffic in any area not designed to accommodate adequately the type and volume.
Do you know whether or not the township in its designation of this property as prime property for the expansion of Bondsville Road conducted any sort of traffic study to figure out whether or not it was appropriate for the motor and wheeled vehicle traffic designed to accommodate the type and volume appropriate for a riparian corridor?
I'm not aware of any studies that they have done.
But you are aware that they designated this property for that purpose, correct?
Oh yes, it's noted on a number of planning documents.
The property were so designated by the township for such purpose that is specifically prohibited by the township's own code. Would it be fair to assume that a townhome would be less intrusive to that type of environmental condition than a road or a traffic circle?
Yes, it would have less impact.
I believe Mr. Foley asked you whether or not you thought this might require some sort of zoning relief in terms of the setback. And having looked at the code, specifically the same code section that we were just looking at, I-2, so 399-13.1, I-2. Do you agree with me that that says for any use or activity not subject to subdivision or land development review, but subject to an application for approval of conditional use, ... the applicant may request modifications to the provisions above during the conditional use process?
Yes, that is what it says.
Thank you. If you would, Mr. Kennedy, do you have the applicant's exhibits in front of you?
The binder? Actually, I do not, no.
Well, let me put it this way. Do you have the Planning Commission's letter dated November 19th of 2024 in front of you?
I'm sorry, what exhibit is that?
A22.
Thank you.
The Chester County Planning Commission?
Yes.
Yes, I do have that one in front of me.
And on page 4 of that, and I know that we've had some issues with the shrinking down of the Planning Commission, the County Planning Commission's visuals here in their response letter. But page 4 has what is entitled 2012 Guthriesville Village Development Strategy Plan Design Guide, correct?
Yes, that's at the bottom of the page.
And can you locate on this the applicant's property?
Yes, I can.
And does it seem to indicate any wetlands or riparian corridor as per the township's own mapping?
No, it does not.
Now, I would ask you to look at, well, for purposes of the record as well, there's a larger, for the board if they want to have a better visual, applicant's Exhibit 41 is the same map, but on a larger scale. That's okay if you don't have it.
Yeah,
I just
I
wanted
do not.
the board to be able to look at it on a larger scale. Now, 13.1, the same code section that we've been looking at with respect to the riparian corridor, includes a subsection C, and specifically I would have you look at C1, which reads, within the first 50 feet of any designated riparian corridor conservation district, existing natural vegetative conditions shall be maintained unless determined by the township to be undesirable and/or contrary to the objectives of this section. Do you agree that that's how that reads?
C1?
Yes.
That is correct. That is correct.
I'm just going to note that that's not a complete reading of that section.
Yes. It was just the portion relevant to my question, but I will continue if you prefer.
Please, because it relates to what kind of vegetation is to be maintained in the first 50 feet.
Following the date of enactment of this section, restoration of the first 50 feet of an impacted riparian corridor will be required, and predominant vegetation must be composed of a variety of locally adapted native tree and shrub species planted in accordance with section 350-531F, revegetation standards of the subdivision and land development ordinance. Amended 3/3/2016 by ordinance number 02-2016.
Thank you.
With respect to the portion I read that specifically says, unless determined by the township to be undesirable and/or contrary to the objectives of this section, I'm going to ask you to look at what we have marked as Applicant Exhibit 38. Represent for the record that this is a copy of the East Brandywine Township Planning Commission minutes from Wednesday, May 7th, 2014. And on page 5, I would have you look at the second paragraph and read that into the record if you would for me.
Very well. This is page 5 of the Planning Commission minutes. It's a section on, it was on a discussion of the Guthriesville Master Plan. And the second paragraph states, last month, Mr. Pearsall met with representatives from PADEP to discuss riparian buffer/wetland regulations. In PADEP Chapter 102, Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control. Chris Smith from PADEP has indicated that those regulations are not intended to apply to projects such as the Village of Guthriesville. A meeting has been scheduled to meet with representatives from the Chester County Conservation District for May 15th, along with Jason Duckworth from Arcadia Group, to discuss this in relation to the Village Master Plan.
Thank you. Do you agree with me that Mr. Pearsall, who is the township manager at the time, in coordination with PADEP, at least from these minutes, did not anticipate that those standards would apply to this property? Correct?
Objection to the form of the question. This letter specifically refers to PADEP Chapter 102, not to the township's ordinance. Don't misconstrue the two.
I'm speaking with riparian buffer/wetland regulations.
Well, I mean, it's sort of hearsay on top of hearsay. I mean,
Hold on, it's a government record.
pardon me?
It's a government record.
So it speaks, I don't see how this witness can testify about what this record says.
No, but this witness can, I have to put in the record a rebuttal to the presumption that somehow
Well,
this section 13.1 applies to this property specifically. The township manager, in coordination with DEP, as reported in Planning Commission meeting minutes, which is an official government record, I presume, indicated that that was not, those regulations were not applicable to this property.
well, but though, I mean, the document speaks for itself. Those regulations, to me, is referring to Chapter 102.
Well, I have to get it into the record somehow, Mr.
Well, you just did. You read it into the record.
I did, so, but I don't think it's hearsay.
Okay, fine. You read it. I don't think this witness can testify about what,
I had him read it into the record.
that's fine, but he can't testify what it means, about what it means.
Well, I mean, I think if he can testify as to what the code means in response to Mr. Foley's questions, he can certainly testify as to what meeting minutes mean.
I disagree. He testified he's an expert at reviewing ordinances.
Yeah, I don't see how he can give us his interpretation.
Okay, well, it's in the record, and I
Fine,
would
it's in
ask
the-
the
I
board,
agree.
I would ask the board to take
Well-
judicial, quasi-judicial notice of its own planning commission meeting minutes.
Well, yeah, the testimony is in the record.
Thank you. Now, you were asked a question with respect to, oh wait, just one moment. You were asked a question with respect to sewage effluent and the availability of disposal areas for sewage. And to that end, and since the board does not want the witness to testify, I just want to have the board take judicial notice of applicant's exhibit 27, specifically page 2, which is the East Brandywine Township Planning Commission meeting minutes from June 5th of 2019, page 2, where it begins, Mr. Winters referenced the availability of public sewer for the proposed project, period. Member Corbin noted his belief that capacity is available and would likely be a matter of tapping into the line going to the pump station.
Semicolon, however, comma, more information is needed, period.
Okay. During land development.
I'm sorry, you both got ahead of me. I see Exhibit A27, and there's a subheading 2069 Bondsville Road sketch plan. And you were reading somewhere from that?
I was reading from page 2.
Page 2.
First paragraph, 6th line down.
Okay, thank you.
And I would also ask the board to take judicial notice of
Well,
applicant's exhibit 15. You don't want him to
no,
testify.
I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to be contrary, but it seems to me, so you're asking the board to accept these documents for truth without a witness testifying about it?
It's a government document.
Well,
It's your own
I'm just
document.
asking a question. I'm not arguing with you. That's what you want the board.
Absolutely asking the board to take notice of its own governmental records.
Okay.
Yes, I
thank you.
am.
So there's no need to read anything into the record.
And also,
I'm not indicating that they will, but that's what you're asking. The board, I'm not indicating that the board will accept these records as truth.
that's troubling.
I
Under
didn't
what
say-
circumstances
I
would
didn't
this
say
board
I
not
am or
accept?
I'm not. I just want to make sure I understand.
I want to understand under what circumstances the board would
Well,
not accept.
typically documents are identified by a witness and somebody testifies about it.
Okay, I'll make sure that during the course of this hearing now I call a member of the planning commission.
Okay, we might.
If
have
that's
to-
necessary, that seems unnecessary, but I'll,
Understood.
if you don't want to truncate the proceedings, that's fine. Will the board take notice of applicant's exhibit 15, which is a table from its own Act 537 plan? Table 5-2.
Well, we see the document, but someone needs to testify about what that document means. See, it's not even identified of being part of the 537 plan. Just because there's an entry on here that says winner's track, someone needs to testify about what this document means.
Are you suggesting that I've somehow altered the township's
I am
Act
not
537 plan?
suggesting that at all.
Okay, I guess I can call the township manager as a witness.
Well, I don't know whether he's
Or
qualified.
aren't you the solicitor for the municipal
I
authority?
am, but I can't testify about what it means.
Can't testify about what the table of the municipal authorities Act 537 plan
No,
means?
I did not prepare the Act 537 plan.
Okay. Can I ask the township manager who's present if he could clarify whether or not this is a true
Well,
and
wait a minute,
accurate?
he's not been called as a witness, he's not under oath. If you want to do that at some point, that's fine.
Do you really think that's, if you really think that's necessary, that's fine. I've never in my life had a township not accept notice of its own.
I didn't say
records.
we're not doing that. What I'm saying is how is the Board of Supervisors going to know what this means? Exhibit A-15. What it is, what it was a part of, and what it means. What is the purpose of it? How is the board going to know that?
I'd be more than happy to explain.
Well, you're
Or I
not.
suppose you could, in executive session, as the
Well, I
township
wouldn't do
solicitor.
that. They can't use statements in executive session as evidence.
Okay, perhaps I can get it in for our engineer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nevertheless, I do submit it for the board's acknowledgement, A15.
Well, and keep in mind, none of the documents have been admitted none of the exhibits have been admitted into the record. That comes at a
No,
later
that would
time.
come at the conclusion of the hearing, correct?
Just for a courtesy heads up, I would object to that without the rest of the document of which it's a part.
Sure. You want, would you like me to provide a copy of the entire Act 537 plan?
Yes, if you're going to submit part of it, we need to see all of it.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. No further questions.
I just have one quick topic. And I apologize in advance because this will be the third time you've been asked to look at this section of the ordinance. Would you please look again at section 13.1, capital I-2 of the ordinance?
And we've taken some liberties with identifying these sections, but you're talking about section 399-13.1.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Capital I, parentheses, number 2. You have that in front of you, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You were just now asked whether that section allows for any use or activity not subject to subdivision or land development review, but subject to application for approval of a conditional use, allows modifications to the provisions of this section. Do you recall that?
That is correct.
But what was not asked of you is what are the specific subsections that modification is permitted for? They're listed right there in that section.
It states, may request modifications to the provisions of section 399-13(1)B, comma, C1 and C1A.
And specifically not listed in that section are the 3 sections that your original plan requested variances for. Those are section 399-13.1. Capital C, parentheses 2, not listed, correct?
They are not listed because that would be a different proceeding.
Correct. Section 399-13.1. Capital D, parentheses 1, not listed in that section about conditional use proceedings, correct?
That is correct.
And finally, section 399-13.1. Capital D, parentheses 2, not listed in that section.
That is correct. That's not listed in that
And
section.
to the contrary, subsection 6, under that same section, capital I, correct me if I don't read this correctly, reads, number 6, quote, no alteration of the use regulations set forth in section 399-13.1, capital C, parentheses 1, parentheses B, and parentheses C, comma, C2, comma, and D shall be authorized as a modification pursuant to this section. Any such requested alteration shall constitute an application for a variance, meeting all the applicable requirements for same, comma, to be submitted to the zoning hearing board, period, unquote. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is what it says.
Thank you. That would be a use variance, by the way, wouldn't it?
That could be a use hearing.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any objection from council for the members of the Board of Supervisors asking questions.
Of course not.
I don't, as long as they're relevant to the direct and the cross, but I would note in response to Mr.
I'm sorry, as long as they're relevant to what?
The direct and the cross.
Right, understood.
But the applicant's amended application submitted on December 19th of 2024, which is part of the township's exhibits. So I would hope you would take notice of that exhibit. It did include a request for modification of every single section that Mr. Foley just iterated on the record. And there was no deficiency letter ever received from the township review. So I just want that on the record and to submit that for the board's acknowledgement. And I do not object to the board's questions.
Just to respond to that, are we not clear that the application as amended includes the materials submitted with the original application, which lists those 3 variances as being requested, to be requested?
Sorry?
Is it, do we not understand that the amended application includes the materials submitted with the original application?
Unless as modified. I mean, if there's an amendment, obviously something has changed. That's what an amendment entails.
Okay, so that we're clear then, the amended application does not include variance requests for those 3 sections. Is that accurate?
I don't think that this board has the jurisdiction to grant a variance.
Of course not, but you're requesting modifications
Modifications
only from this board.
from this board
Thank you.
pursuant to the code. Yes.
Do the board members have any questions of the witness? And that they're limited to what this witness testified about.
I'll start, and mine are very simple questions. My first question was, we're going back to your last testimony a couple weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
You said that you had visited the property.
Yes,
How many times did you visit the property?
I have been to the property twice.
Okay, and do you remember the conditions of the weather at the times that you were there?
Actually, I don't.
Okay, my next question for you was, you stated that you recommend all your clients get soils tests done.
Yes,
And did you recommend this client get soil tests done?
I did say that if this moves forward, I would recommend having soils tested.
But no tests have been done to your knowledge at this point?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, well, my last question is simple. You had stated when we were talking, when it was brought up about heavy traffic versus a townhouse, you said a townhouse is much less weight, or I believe that's what you tended to say.
I think the way I understood the question would be whether a townhouse would have less impact than a collector road, which was proposed by the township.
But not weight.
Oh, no, not necessarily weight, no.
Because I consider hydrostatic pressure to be,
No, not weight.
okay. That was my only question.
I just want to make sure for the record, are you talking about physical weight or
I was
conceptual weight?
I was concerned that you were talking about conceptual weight with trucks.
So physical weight?
Correct.
Yes.
Any other questions from anybody?
Now, Mr. Kennedy, you had an exhibit application number 9. You're showing townhouses to be 18 feet wide by 36 feet deep.
That's
Are they
correct.
to have a garage with those buildings?
Yes, they would have a garage in the back,
Okay.
which would be alley loaded.
And I think we've already covered the 9-block section is, I'm going to say unusual, but not commonly designed.
It is unusual, but I'm aware of communities that have been designed that way, yes.
But not in Chester County.
I couldn't really say in Chester County. Most likely in Phoenixville there is, but where I am the planner in Lansdale, we have very similar units to these.
I think that's all I have. Mr. Boyer will be testifying, correct, at some point? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have any questions, Carl?
No, I do not. My questions were covered with the other two.
Well, it seems like
Let's check with Tom.
it's now 8:30, and it seems my optimism about the number of witnesses we get tonight was overstated. So, does the board want to hear the direct testimony from another witness tonight?
That's what I was just discussing. If you're, and I'm just being fair to you guys as well, everybody here. If we go as long as we went with this first witness, then what got confusing for me, and I'm just being honest with you guys, is going back and trying to remember what someone stated
I agree.
a meeting ago.
I
And then
agree.
it dilutes it a little bit, and then you're trying to remember why he said what he said. And that,
We won't have the transcript, so I completely agree with you for continuity's sake. Yes, Mr. Scribner, if that is your inclination, I certainly won't quibble.
I was just concerned with 15 minutes, it's not going to.
I don't think that this would be done in an hour.
So, the parties are willing then to stop for this evening, and we will, is that correct?
Yes.
And we'll continue the hearing until Thursday, April 17th. Is that the right date, Luke? I think it is.
Yes. April the 17th.
Thursday, April 17th, to begin immediately after the Board of Supervisors meeting, which the supervisors meeting starts at 6:30 p.m.
And I think I could even take it a step further and say, Luke, if there's anything that we can push from the evening meeting to the morning meeting, the prior meeting, maybe we could give a little bit more time to this.
I think we could wrap it up if we could do that. I would only ask, and I would only have a couple of questions for the relevant people, but being as the rules of discovery and evidence are relaxed in these proceedings, Mr. Esty, how would you prefer that I request testimony from township officials to admit the certain exhibits?
I don't know that that's necessary. I think some witness has to identify, for example, Exhibit A15. One of your witnesses needs to identify that that's part of the township's Act 537 plan, and it's page whatever, or it's an exhibit, and what that witness's understanding of what that page means.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily, if that person has the knowledge,
Okay.
that's all.
And if that person doesn't have the knowledge, and you would be more satisfied with somebody from the township who created the document, how should I do
Or we
that?
might be able to get a stipulation.
Okay.
In other words, the 537 plan was prepared by the municipal authority, but it was approved
Yes.
by the board
Yes,
of
that's
supervisors.
why I thought notice would be appropriate.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Esty, just to try to be helpful on that, we can stipulate to the identity of the documents. So you don't need a witness to identify that this is an accurate copy of the planning commission minutes. We'll agree to that.
Okay.
So, but I don't think that's what Mr. Esty is getting to.
I'm trying to figure out yes. I'm just trying to navigate the notice portion of this, yes. But if you
Thank you.
want to stipulate, that's wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.